Hi, I'm Dee Good, and I'm with Shambhala Mountain Center. And today I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with Cedar Barstow, who is an expert on right use of power, and in fact is the founder of the Right Use of Power Institute and the author of several books on using power wisely and ethical behavior. So welcome, Cedar. So excited to talk to you today.
Thanks, Dee. Nice to see you.
So you're going to be teaching a retreat at Shambhala Mountain Center, or a training on right use of power. And I just wonder, what can people expect, and who should take this program? Who needs to know the right use of power?
Well, so when I started designing a program to train people in how to use their power wisely and well, I thought, well, I just have to provide training for the leaders so that they'll know what their responsibilities are and how the relationship where there's a difference in power works, because it gets very complex. And that'll be it. And then over time, I've discovered that it's at least as important for the people who are working with the leaders, the people the leaders are leading,
Mhm.
to understand about the dynamics and ethics of power when there's a difference. We call it a power differential. So I think anybody and everybody should come. It's fascinating material, including finding out some of the neuroscience that is really very new about what happens to our brains when we get elevated power.
I think it's so interesting that some of the things that you talk about around the right use of power is that not using one's own power effectively, even when you are in a down power position, as compared to maybe the leader in your organization, that we have a responsibility to use our own power well, even if it's not as much as other people may have.
Yeah. Yeah. So I start out in the class by differentiating between several kinds of power. And one is your personal power, which is what you have with you all the time. And the second is role power, which is an assigned role of a leader, teacher, CEO, um, manager. All of those things are what we call, and you referred to the term already, up power roles. And the people who are um, who you are as a leader working with are in what we call a down power position, but has to be very clear that up power doesn't mean all power and down power doesn't mean no power, because all of us have lots of different kinds of power to learn how to manage well. And I find that there are two ways that we can get confused about power. One is when we think power is just this monolithic force and we need to avoid it because we've seen how much harm it causes. And harm tends to stick to us like Velcro, whereas good uses of power and those experiences we also have many of, where we've been really supported, helped, moved along, gotten huge insight from right uses of power, those just slip off like water. So we tend to get stuck on the tough ones.
Mm. And I'll just share that I have been taking an in-depth training with you on the right use of power, and I've learned so much just about how our very early experiences and attitudes can affect the way we react, or the way we feel about the use of power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too that a lot of women in particular tend to minimize the personal and role power that we do have, because we don't want to, it feels dangerous.
or our culture has tended to not see women as leaders in a very good light.
Mhm.
And so we've been trained into underusing our power and not feeling okay owning it. And the other half of the spectrum is where people over identify with their power. And so when they have their personal power and then they add on a role power as a leader, they tend to start thinking of themselves as their identity is this combination of role power and personal power. And that gets very confusing and can cause a lot of misuses of power and harm.
So in your program that you're going to be leading soon, what can people expect? Like what kinds of work will people be doing in this program?
Well, first off, I want to tell you that it's very experiential, as you know already. And I really think that that's the most potent and exciting and interesting and engaging way to learn. It's like learning about how power works from owning it and understanding your history with it on the inside. And it's learning it that way helps it be a much better resource than if you just read the book.
Right. So
So,
it's not some abstract thing, it's
uh,
stuff that you can apply on a day-to-day basis,
yeah.
right?
So you'll learn things about how to work with really difficult situations. And there's a 5-step process that we teach that people find very useful. Uh, you'll learn you'll learn how to navigate power differential situations. Um, you'll learn a lot about redefining feedback as a high level skill that engages us more in relationship. So feedback can be seen as an investment in relationship rather than a pronouncement about some bad thing you've done and need to change.
Mhm. And what is the role of heart or compassion in this work?
Uh, Well, I think of it as learning how to stand in your strength while you're staying in your heart. We often think we have to choose to be either strong or empathetic, and we don't. In fact, things work better if we combine the two. And uh, some of the neurobiology says that you tend to, as your power gets more and more elevated, you tend to lose some of your empathy. And so in learning this, we can be more proactive by noticing if we're getting less empathetic and bring that back and remembering how important it is to use power in a way that works and that is effective and that keeps people connected to you.
I love that image of standing in your power while remaining connected to your heart.
So, if you choose to come to this course, I can pretty much guarantee that you'll find out some very interesting things about yourself and your history and relationship with power. And you'll find some very interesting things about other people that you know and people you don't know, and end up with some skills for better navigating power differential relationships.
That's beautiful. This is such important work. Thank you so much for your teaching and for your time, Cedar.